what does this actually mean for cannabis businesses, possibly patients, and medical providers across the country?
Well, the executive order basically requested the Attorney General to begin to expedite the process of rescheduling. And it will take it from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3. It'll take it from no medicinal value to some form of medicinal value. What it'll do is it'll enable research of medical cannabis, but will not legalize recreational use of cannabis. And so there are some mixed benefits associated with this policy change. The executive order also instructed his staff to work with Congress in order to examine the definition of hemp from a product perspective. And so these are two major cannabis policies that hint at reform, but how long that reform will take is still to be determined.
Right. And for the average person on the ground, does this executive order actually change very much? I mean, it sounds like it's a lot of research, some political things here and there, but for the average person, what does this do?
It doesn't really do much at all because they still have to complete the rescheduling process. And there's different paths that this rescheduling process could take. They could have hearings in Congress, public commentary, all sorts of different discussions and rulemaking. So the expediting of this process could take months or even years to complete. So on the surface right now, it doesn't really do anything, but it provides guidance that reform is potential and that the benefits to businesses and suppliers in this space would come about later on.
So this current classification has been in place for more than 50 years. What do you think prompted the Trump administration to make this change now? I mean, was this a surprise for a lot of people?
It wasn't necessarily a surprise. There was efforts by the previous presidential administration to reclassify cannabis. And so there's been general momentum in this reform space. The public view of cannabis for either medical or adult use purposes has been extremely high, 67% at one point when it peaked. So public support for reform is in place. And so I think this is has slowly evolved in terms of the overall policy.
President Trump had a big crowd behind him during that signing. What has been the reaction from growers, dispensaries, and cannabis firms so far? I mean, no doubt a lot of lobbying for many years around this issue.
Yeah, the focus from growers and product manufacturers and retailers, there's a lot of excitement, but they don't quite know what this means and how to adjust their operations in response to this. But for right now, what our group is advising operators in this space is to continue to operate as the status quo, but prepare your operations for reform in the future. I think that's the best thing that you can do. In terms of overall benefit, though, there may be a tax benefit. There may be an opportunity to supply, to a greater group of consumers. However, in this space, it really comes down to what the rules that are promulgated, what they say, and when they're promulgated.
You talked about the time frame here. Any challenges or challengers to this? I mean, could we see this all rolled back again?
Yeah, in the previous administration, there was efforts to implement some reform, and they were met with a lot of lawsuits, and it delayed the process. And so I don't think that that will change with this administration as well. There'll be a lot of discussions about what's the best way to implement this, who has jurisdiction, what type of license requirements will be implemented on behalf of the DEA and the Food and Drug Administration. So there's a lot of infrastructure that needs to be set up in order for this to start benefiting not only operators, but consumers as well.
In about 30 seconds left, Beau, does this decision at all in the United States move the needle in other countries, or other countries watching what's happening here?
I certainly believe that it does have an effect because a lot of countries, there's over 115 globally that have some type of reform occurring, some type of access to cannabis. And so this sends a signal. The US is rather dominant in this space. And so a lot of people look to the US for policy. By looking at reform, it opens up at least the medical markets internationally. It opens up the potential for interstate or international trade. And it also sets up the market here in the United States for the importation of cannabis as well. So it's a bit of a mixed bag, but it's creating a lot of buzz, pun intended, across the country and across the globe.
Beau Whitney, thank you so much for sharing your perspective. Thank you so much for joining us from Portland, Oregon.
谢谢。